That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Putin is trying to bait the trap so that we go in.
If you compare month to month, we've seen inflationary pressure or inflationary numbers go down month to month.
Inflation is at a 40-year high again. Inflation numbers out yesterday, and they're not good at all. Kamala Harris goes to Poland to try and solve the Ukrainian situation. Nancy Pelosi agrees with Marco Rubio on something. Holy cow, that's nuts. And also an update on the Disney story that we were talking about yesterday with Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida and the "don't say gay" nonsensely named by the media bill. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. On today, it is March 10th, the year of our Lord 2022. It's my 4-year anniversary. Happy anniversary, Crystal. I love you so much, and you're great. What's not great is a lot of stuff happening around the world. Kamala Harris got sent to Poland. Inflation numbers are in, and they are not good at all. Jen Psaki made a interesting statement the other day regarding inflation, so we're going to talk about that. Pelosi agrees with Rubio. I just mentioned all this stuff, so we're just going to get right on into it. Miss Kamala Harris has gone to Poland. The Vice President of the United States, who isn't really good at much, has gone to hopefully try and solve the biggest world crisis in a very, very long time. On Thursday, their time, the vice president went to Poland on Wednesday. It says Wednesday. It's Wednesday our time, and then you get there, and it's Thursday, and all of my days are mixed up because things are going on in Europe. Vice President Harris' trip to Poland comes amid tense times in the regions with difficult negotiations between Warsaw and Washington, Warsaw being the capital of Poland. But the administration officials, get this is funny, says she's not there to make any deals, whether it be humanitarian aid or the transfer of military equipment. Instead, her role is to serve as an emissary and an emblem of the administration's commitment to the country and the transatlantic alliance more broadly. Kamala Harris has gone to Poland as an emissary, not to negotiate. The White House is like, please, for the love of God, do not do any negotiating. Whether it be humanitarian or military, don't negotiate, Kamala. But you can be there as a nice face to look at, as a representative of American values and somebody who can really rah the crowd, which she's not the best at doing if you haven't figured that out. Look at this clip. This is a fun Kamala-ism. It's a little wordy here. She's talking about whether or not the UN is going to investigate all of the happenings that led up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And it's not her most nonsensical, but it is a little nonsensical. Watch the vice president here.
The UN has set up a process by which there will be a review and investigations, and we will, of course, participate as appropriate and necessary. But we all watched the television coverage of just yesterday. That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened. But just limited to what we have seen.
So that, again, is the vice president doing her thing up in Warsaw. Can you imagine being Zelensky even, or the president of Warsaw, Duda, and everybody's asking for help in that region of the world, and the United States says, we'll do it, we'll send Kamala Harris, the vice president. And people in the eastern part of Europe are like, really? Of all of the people, that's who you're going to send? But the vice president had no indication that Harris's trip was aimed at dealing with any impasse. Rather, the administration officials and allies say her goal is to bring sensitive requests back to the president to reaffirm Washington's commitment to help Ukraine and others affected by the Russian invasion. So Kamala Harris took a very expensive plane ride to do what a telephone call could have done. Her goal is not to negotiate. For the love of God, Kamala, do not negotiate on behalf of Washington. Nobody wants you to do that. Even though your border situation has totally resolved itself and everything's fine down at the southern border now. Oh, wait, no, it's not. The elections bill that you wanted to get through totally passed, and that's totally fine. Oh, wait, that didn't work either. All of the things that Kamala Harris is tasked with doing is not awesome or have not turned out well. The administration officials and allies say that Harris's trip to Europe is an illustration of President Joe Biden's trust in her in these moments, even in fields like national security, where she has not been given much of a portfolio during her vice presidency. I wonder why. They note the good reviews she's received in just a few weeks since her appearance at the Munich Security Conference as evidence that she's more deft in international diplomacy than her critics concede. Interesting verbiage used there. Maybe inept. And I know I've read a lot of this article, but it's funny because it keeps going on because they want to reiterate so much that Kamala Harris, don't worry, America, she's not there to negotiate. And they want to make that point so clear in this article. The vice president's visit is meant to send a signal of reassurance and unity on the part of the United States, the Eastern NATO allies, says a Brussels-based European program director for the International Crisis Group. So there's that. Kamala Harris in Warsaw doing her thing, which is not generally good for the American people or the country as a whole. I want to transition to this. Nancy Pelosi was getting up on the not the stump, the press conference, talking the other day to reporters, asking questions about the no-fly space, no-fly zone. That's been a huge, big issue of contention among a lot of people in the country. A lot of people who don't quite understand what a no-fly zone is are very gung-ho about instituting a no-fly zone over Europe. A lot of people who do know what a no-fly zone is, we had a clip of Marco Rubio explaining it on ABC This Week on Monday, saying, hey, this is what a no-fly zone will do. Nancy Pelosi was up talking to reporters and actually agreed with Rubio, and I kind of agreed with what she said. Now, it's probably half of you are going to tune out right now because you hate Nancy Pelosi because she is, in fact, the Wicked Witch of the West. Not the best in terms of policy-wise, and some would say the worst. And I wouldn't disagree with you there. But in this particular instance, being the non-interventionalist type of person that I am, and being the maybe let's not get involved in foreign conflicts to a military extent, I kind of didn't mind what Pelosi had to say. Watch this.
But they know that we can't go there. Putin is trying to bait the trap so that we go in, and that's could be the beginning of World War III. Putin totally irresponsible using weapons that are not allowed under the Geneva Convention. Putin who threatens use of chemical weapons, nuclear, and the rest. So they know that we can't, but it's the ask.
So there's a no-fly zone. The Ukrainians have been asking for a no-fly zone for NATO or its allies or the United States specifically to protect the airspace over Ukraine to stop Russian fighter jets or Russian anything from getting over into the airspace in Ukraine. Nancy Pelosi there said, yeah, this is Putin trying to bait us into World War III, which I know people have their panties wadded up over Nancy Pelosi because they dislike her a lot. And I don't disagree with you there, but I kind of appreciate some bipartisanship on, hey, maybe let's cool our jets here, and that, no pun intended, and not have to protect Ukrainian airspace. I wanted to replay that clip from Marco Rubio over the weekend, talking about the no-fly zone and what he said to George Stephanopoulos on ABC this week.
Are you and your colleagues now more open to a no-fly zone?
You know, look, a no-fly zone has become a catchphrase. I'm not sure a lot of people fully understand what that means. That means flying AWACS 24 hours a day. That means the willingness to shoot down and engage Russian airplanes in the sky. That means, frankly, you can't put those planes up there unless you're willing to knock out the anti-aircraft systems that the Russians have deployed, and not just in Ukraine, but in Russia and also in Belarus. So basically, a no-fly zone, if people understood what it means World War III. It means starting World War III. So I think there are a lot of things we can do to help Ukraine protect itself, both from airstrikes and missile strikes. But I think that people need to understand what a no-fly zone means. It's not some rule you pass that everybody has to oblige by. It's the willingness to shoot down the aircrafts of the Russian Federation, which is basically the beginning of World War III.
So that was, again, Senator Rubio of Florida talking about what it actually means to institute a no-fly zone. So there's that. Pelosi and Rubio agreeing on something. And I know some of you don't like Rubio, and I know a lot of you, most of you, probably all of you, really, really despise Nancy Pelosi. But sometimes things just turn out to be the way they are. And sometimes those people agree on things, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. I don't know if people saw this clip the other day. Was it the other day? No, it was yesterday. Jen Psaki at the White House press briefing room. Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, talking about inflation and the fact that it's going down. Before we get to this clip, I wanted to hit you with the numbers. Inflation rose 7.9% in February, the fastest pace of acceleration since 1982, actually 40 years ago. Prices increased 7.9% in the year in February, the fastest growing pace in 40 years. Rising costs of gas and food and rent all contributed to the increase, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said. Rapidly growing prices have hit consumers in the pocketbook, causing confidence to fall and stretching household budgets. Rising wages and savings amassed during the pandemic have helped families continue despite rising prices so far, but the burden is falling intensely on lower income households, which devote a big chunk of their budgets to daily necessities that are now swiftly becoming more and more expensive. This is actually from the Daily Caller. So, yeah, inflation at almost 8%. So, remember when we were talking a couple of weeks ago of inflation stole 7% of your money? Buy Birch Gold. Yeah, it's actually 8% of your money now. So, there's that. With that in mind, listen to what Jen Psaki said, and also in the comment section, remind me to get to the $1.5 trillion spending bill the House just passed. I want to talk about that briefly, but I might forget because it's on this part of the screen that I don't often look at. Watch this clip from Jen Psaki. Look, if you haven't already, I know there's a couple thousand of you watching this, click the little like button, click the little share button. It really, really helps us out. I really appreciate it. I'm probably going to play this clip a couple times, so if you click the like button and it gets to another friend of yours and they start watching, don't worry, we'll replay the clip because it is that hilarious and that short. Watch this White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki talking inflation.
What specifically can you point to that has worked to bring down inflation?
Well, there are a number of steps we've taken. If you compare month to month, we've seen inflationary pressure or inflationary numbers go down month to month.
Jen Psaki, if you look at it, inflation numbers you've seen go down month to month. Here's the thing. That's not true. Inflation has been going up. I don't know if you've seen gas prices or any other prices. Inflation is going through the roof. Now, I think we should point out the little tactical, technical trick that a lot of politicians try to play on people like us. The White House press secretary trying to play a little trick on the American people, saying that, well, inflation is down a little bit. So we pulled up this graph, and I will make this bigger for you so you can see it. if you look at these numbers, inflation January 2021 was up 1.4%, then 1.7, 2.6. You can see how this thing goes. If you're just listening, there's a big graph on the screen. From July 2021 to August 2021, inflation went down. The inflation increase went down 0.1%. That is what Jen Psaki is using to justify the idea that inflation is down month to month. So again, if you're looking at that graph, inflation was 5.4% in July and 5.3% in August. Therefore, Jen Psaki gets to say, well, month to month, sometimes it goes down. 5.3% is still freaking high, Miss Psaki. And also, when you if something is going up and rising, this is the little technical trick that politicians love to play. If something is rising constantly, but then one month it doesn't rise as much, they say, well, sometimes it goes down. But that's not really a fair depiction of what's going on. That's like saying, hey, I punched you in the face 15 times in January, but in February, I only punched you in the face 12 times. You're still getting punched in the face 12 times. Doesn't make it any better. And then the next month, it's up to 20 again. That's the little trick that politicians like to play on the American people. And she thinks we're too dumb to actually do any of the homework ourselves or recognize the fact that, wait a minute, did she just say inflation went down? But of course it has not. Like we said earlier, inflation numbers out yesterday, and it's up a lot. Most in 40 years, highest since 1982. The last person to deal with this was Reagan. So there's that. Also wanted to talk. Actually, you know what? I promised I'd play that one more time. Let me play that Jen Psaki clip one more time.
What specifically can you point to that has worked to bring down inflation?
Well, there are a number of steps we've taken. If you compare month to month, we've seen inflationary pressure or inflationary numbers go down month to month.
LOLs, no, it hasn't. Jen Psaki using a little tiny technical trick to try and fool the American people into thinking they're not as bad as they actually are. I want to get to this. The House passed a $1.5 trillion spending bill that includes emergency funds for Ukraine after Democrats stripped out a contentious COVID-19 aid provision that would have clawed back states' unused coronavirus pandemic money from the proposal. I wouldn't have hated that. Remember, a bunch of your states got a bunch of COVID money. And by a bunch, I mean $4 billion freaking dollars of COVID money. The federal government sent out mostly to states and maybe other bigger local municipalities to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. A lot of that money, there was so much money, it couldn't get used. So much money given out during COVID that it couldn't get used. And now states have a bunch of money sitting left over. If you live in California, you remember Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, running his recall campaign, saying that California has a budget surplus. California is in massive debt and is continuing to go further and further into the hole. So how was he saying, oh, we have a budget surplus? Well, the reason he got to say we had a budget surplus is because the federal freaking government gave California millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in coronavirus aid that then went to stifle the budget deficit in California. So he got to say we have a surplus. All that's to say is that states got an exuberant amount of money from the federal government, and there was a clause in this $1.5 trillion spending bill to continue to fund the government, I think through like September, like not even all that long, that was saying, hey, maybe we should ask for some of that money back. And Democrats said, no! You will not get that money back. It's already given to the state for our unicornian plans to help further socialism in the United States of America. Decision was to remove $15 billion of COVID relief money was a dramatic setback for both House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who negotiated the plan only to see many rank-and-file Democrats reject it. So even Nancy Pelosi was on the side of saying, hey, you got to give that money back. The president and President Biden, whose administration originally asked for $22 billion to fund vaccine treatments, research will now get nothing. Oh, that's interesting. So that money was supposed to go to the White House and the administration to try and fund vaccines and treatments. So that's interesting. Oh, the House also voted to send $13 billion to Ukraine and the allies as a part of the $1.5 billion financing agreement. So there's that $13 billion freaking dollars going to Ukraine. Maybe you think that's a good idea. Maybe you don't. We'll leave it at that. I wanted to touch back on this story. We talked about this yesterday, Ron DeSantis, which I've got the Ron DeSantis clip from yesterday so that we can revisit that. Disney is not woke enough. That's the headline here. If you remember yesterday, we were talking about the Don't Say Gay bill, which is not what that is at all. Actually, the National Review had an article yesterday saying, hey, don't say gay, because they're miscategorizing it and we shouldn't play into their language games, which I agree with. But since everybody already knows what it is, I think maybe we can mock it at this point. Just a quick recap. Yesterday, we talked about the Don't Say Gay bill. That is not at all what it is. That bill is basically saying, hey, maybe we don't need to teach kindergartners through third graders, so 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, maybe you don't need to teach them about sexual orientation and gender identity. That's all of this bill is saying, and it seems pretty agreeable among most sane Americans. However, the Human Rights Campaign announced on their website Wednesday evening it is refusing a $5 million donation from Disney. Disney was set to give $5 million to this group called the Human Rights Campaign, which there's probably some nonprofit. They are a nonprofit that I would imagine does pretty well, profit-wise. The statement says, we oppose the bill for, Disney CEO Bob Chapek announced the donation during Disney's annual shareholders meeting on Wednesday. He was talking about the Florida bill that is wildly mischaracterized, saying we oppose the bill from the onset, but we choose not to take a public position on it because we thought it could be more effective working behind the scenes, engaging directly with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, said Chapek. The release from the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, which bills itself as the nation's largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer civil rights organization, said it would not accept the money until meaningful action is taken to combat Florida's Don't Say Gay or trans bill. So basically, this nonprofit told Disney to pound sand when Disney didn't take a hardline approach on a piece of legislation that everyone seems to be or deems thoroughly reasonable. Interesting. So now apparently people are going to go after big companies, they already are, if they don't toe the line to their 5% of America agrees with this policy coming out of your wokest of the wokes. This is the statement of, just so you know, the Florida Senate passed the Parental Rights in Education bill on Tuesday with a vote of 22-17, and now it moves to Governor DeSantis' desk where he's expected to sign it into law. This is what's funny and this is what's interesting, Disney not being woke enough. The statement from HRC states that HRC encourages Disney and its employers, encourages Disney and all its employers to continue to fight for their employees, many of whom bravely spoke out to say the CEO's silence was unacceptable in the LGBTQ plus IA 293612 community by working with us to state and local LGBTQ plus 2IA groups to ensure those dangerous anti-equity proposals that harm LGBTQ2 plus kids' families have no place in Florida. So that's not what's happening. So they're beating up a straw man really, really good there down in Florida, the Human Rights Campaign, advocating for something that's not happening, or anti-something that's not happening. And then they say anti-equity, which we've talked about the word equity. Equity is a bad word. It means the outcome, equal outcome of people, which is impossible and only leads to death and destruction. But we'll leave that at its side. Every student deserves to be seen, and every student deserves an education that prepares them for health and success, regardless of who they are, which, again, is not happening in Florida at all. You're making a straw man and punching it directly in the face. Maybe 15 times if you revert back to the Jen Psaki story that we talked about earlier. So that is that. Let's see, we got some stuff on this Jen Psaki clip from a couple days ago where she's saying, well, there's 9,000 approved drilling permits that are completely unused, but maybe we'll save that for tomorrow. What's today? Thursday? Oh, that's right, Thursday, March 10th, my anniversary. Should know that. So we'll leave it there. We'll see if we can get to that 9,000 debunked approved drilling permits that aren't being used from Jen Psaki, but I feel like we hit Jen Psaki enough today. Maybe give her a rest. For a little while. That's going to do it for us. Appreciate all of you taking the time to stick around and listen to my jabbering and bring you the news of the day in a hopefully lighter-hearted way. If you haven't already, I would appreciate a follow on any of the social media platforms. If you're on Instagram, if you're on Twitter, I'm on Truth Social now. So if you're on Truth Social, if you've gotten through the line that it took to get into Truth Social, at JOBOB. If not, I'm on Getter, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Holy cow, I've got too many accounts. I'm on TikTok, by the way, also. But just type in JOBOB, you'll find me there. Warning, fair warning, I am hilarious. So be careful when you go in there. You might laugh uncontrollably at all of the things that I post on Instagram because, as I said, I am hilarious. So give me a follow on any of those social media platforms. Appreciate you sticking around. We'll see you tomorrow on Friday. Little Friday today, so hopefully you enjoy your weekend if it started today. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow. God bless America.